Wow. Hi. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a minute and I apologize. I've been on a YouTube break for a while. It's just been a lot going on and I kind of lost that YouTube drive for a while. It's been a minute, so bear with me here because this feels all foreign again. So just real quick, I am filming this video on my phone. It's been so long since I've done YouTube that I lost the charger to my fancy vlog camera. So obviously by the title of this video, this is the part 2, I guess, if you want to call it, to my What No One Tells You About Losing a Parent video that I uploaded like 2 years ago, something like that. First of all, I did not expect that video to get as many views as it did and be seen the way that it was, but it's honestly amazing because I'm looking in the comment section all the time, and not only is everybody just like trauma dumping in the best possible way, but everybody is like replying to each other and being so sweet and so kind to one another. I feel that people in this comment section can really relate to one another, and it makes me feel so happy that I've created this little tiny safe space where people can, talk about what happened to them, ask questions, whatever they feel the need to do. When I originally uploaded that video, I remember thinking like, if this can help just one person, then it'll all be worth it to me. And so reading hundreds of comments saying like, thank you, this has helped me feel less alone, it's like brought me to tears multiple times because it makes me feel so almost purposeful and just filled with so much gratitude that I was able to use something really unfortunate that happened to me to help people that maybe don't know anyone else going through it and they have nowhere else to go. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for all of the love and support that I have seen on that video, because it does truly mean so much to me. And one of the things that I have seen commented a lot is, can you make a part 2? Can you update us now that it's been a couple more years? And kind of, I don't know if you guys want me to compare the difference, or just talk about where I'm at now, but I'm gonna just kind of roll with it and take it as it goes. So this video is gonna be some like bullet pointed tips, not even tips, topics that I wanted to address. I tried to like play with an order and how am I going to go about this, but I think the best way for me to do this is to just sit here and be honest and open and just talk and just let it come out, because that's what I did last time, and I truly think that trying to like script this is just not going to feel as authentic and genuine and real. Then the second part of this video is actually going to be a little bit different. I have received so many comments and messages, people asking me, my boyfriend or girlfriend just lost their parent, like how can I help them? How do I be there for them? And I do really want to take the time to address that and to put a good amount of time into that, because I was in a relationship when my dad passed away, and I'm not gonna like throw in any details or shade or anything like that, but there were definitely some things that he did that I wasn't very appreciative of, but then there were other things he did that really helped. So I kind of am gonna just base that off of my experience and what I think the best way to go about that is, because that's a situation that's extremely tough, obviously, especially if you've never been through it, and it can change a person, and it can especially change the foundation of your relationship, especially in the beginning. So after that long intro, let's get into it. Really fast, I wanted to answer a question. I got a comment question from Melissa S. She said, if your parent was dying or before your parent passed away, what would you ask to do with them or want to do with them? For me, my dad was so big into the outdoors. He loved to ski and climb and hike and all of those, stereotypical Colorado things. Growing up, especially being younger and being in middle school or high school, he always wanted me to go along and do those things with him. And it was his favorite thing was for, us to do that as a family. But he worked during the week, and so he would want to go on like Saturdays and Sundays at 7 a.m. Me being just a bratty high schooler, I would oftentimes, like more often than not, I wouldn't go because I wanted to sleep in instead. Because I've thought about that question a lot. If I could go back and do it over again, I would have just sucked it up and, woke up early. I want to say as well, there is no benefit to like going back and being like, I wish I did things differently, or I wish I did this, or I didn't do that, because you don't know that they're gonna die when they do, right? Like, it's so important to like, of course, always treat every day with someone like it could be the last. But the reality of that is, especially when you're young, you don't see that coming. Like me being in high school, I was like, oh, I'll just do this, in the future, because I didn't have any other reason to think that I wouldn't get to. Yeah, but that would be my answer. So when I uploaded that video, I believe I was a year out from the death, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, I don't remember exactly. Today I am just over 3 years out. This past Christmas was the 3-year anniversary of when he passed away. He being my dad, in case you didn't know. If you're new here, hello, hi. I want to say that it does get better, and I want all of you to use me as a living testament of this, because I am in a very different spot today than I was when I recorded that video. And a lot of you wanted me to do this video because you wanted to see like, what is it like at this point comparatively to like, when it's a lot more fresh and new. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the ratio of bad days to good days increases. I don't know if that's the right word. Let me explain. In the very beginning, the ratio of bad days to good days might look something like 7 straight bad days, or 6 bad days and 1 good day. And then time goes on and it might be 4 bad days, 3 good days. There were a lot of bad days, and that's the part that is super unbearable and super heavy, because you're like, I don't want this to be the rest of my life. But let me tell you, it's not. It's really not. Me being 3 years out now, I go weeks, having good days. And that doesn't mean that I don't think about him. That doesn't mean that I don't wish he was still around. Like, I think about him every single day, but it's not impairing anymore. It's not paralyzing. It just numbs out essentially, but you're able to function again. You are able to feel joy again. It's hard to explain, but you just have more good days, than bad days. That being said, there are going to be days that suck, and days where that pain still feels like very real. It still is like very heavy, and you might have to take a day off and cry and, do something for yourself, and that's normal and that's okay. Oftentimes those days are triggered by something, and it can be anything. Like, it can be the smell of their perfume, on another person. It can be a song that comes on that you haven't heard in a while that makes you think of them. It can be a Facebook memory that pops up. Just something very small can trigger you very hard, very quickly, to the point where you are upset for the rest of the day. But you have to remember that that's normal and that's expected. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, I told you in the last video, but I'm gonna reiterate it, that this journey that you're going on is not something that you just hit the end point and then everything is good. You don't get over it. You build around it and you adapt to it. And that being said, it's still a part of your life, and it's still something you went through, and it's still a loss that's very real and will always hold that place in your heart. It's normal to be triggered by things, right? Because the next thing kind of leading out of that, a little more on the negative side. So back in the first video, I talked about how there's like an initial grieving period where people grieve with you and then they kind of move on. One thing that I've noticed being so far out is, because you still are going through this and you still have those days where you're extremely triggered by something, say that happens and you're like, I am so upset that I can't go to work, I can't, do this activity, whatever. You can't use that. You can't call in after 3 years and be like, hey, my dad died 3 years ago and I'm really upset about it today. Because your boss and the people that haven't been through it specifically are gonna be like, okay, and that was 3 years ago, move on, get over it, right? They're like, what do you mean? It's like they assume you're using that as an excuse, when the reality is, on those days that you are triggered like that and you're having a bad day, it does very much feel paralyzing sometimes still. People that haven't been through it are just not as willing to be supportive and understanding comparatively to if you had just lost a parent a week ago or a month ago. People expect you to have moved on. Also, going back to the things that can trigger you and leave you upset for a day, there are also days where, at least in my experience, I have just kind of woken up and missed him more than usual and been very upset about it. And I don't know if it's like caused by a dream I had maybe, or if it's normal to just like wake up and just feel off that day and just feel more sad than normal. But just know that if that happens to you, it also happens to me. And so I would go ahead and say it's fairly normal. All of this stuff is just my experience. I'm not a therapist. I do therapy, but I'm not a therapist. One thing is that you kind of just really hope that wherever they are, they're watching you, they're experiencing things with you, especially when you end up having like a big event, like a marriage, a childbirth, graduation, you know, even like some small achievement. I think one of the harder times for sure is when you have something really big happen in your life and you really wish that they were there to share that experience and that joy with you. But for me, I just hold on to the hope, you know, that they are there and they are seeing it and they are aware of what's going on, even though I don't know it. Time seems to have gone by very slow, but also very fast. What I mean by this is when I think about how my dad passed away 3 years ago at this point, there's part of me that's like, it's been 3 years already. Time flew by. It feels like just yesterday, you know, he was sick. And then there's the other half that feels like it's been 10 years and it's been so long since he passed away. And so it's kind of weird how it feels both like a long time and a short time. When it comes to pictures and thinking about memories and things like that, I would say for me at least like 75% of the time I can look at photos and videos and stuff and feel happy, and like it doesn't give me that same sense of like impending doom and just awful, terrible missing them feelings. You do get to a point where like you can look back on memories and laugh about them and not cry about them as often, and that's not going to happen every time. We just found a bunch of old home movies that we finally got transferred from, what are they, VCR tapes, the big black box ones. I sat down over the course of like a week and I watched a ton of them, and I did cry, you know, like there were certain times, like especially hearing him speak, like because you haven't heard them speak for so long, like that'll get you. But there was another part of me that was very comforted by it, and I'm so glad that we have them. There was a good chunk of them that I was able to get through and just smile and like feel grateful to have had him, and it wasn't as painful as I had originally expected. So the last little point that I want to bring up right now that's going to kind of tie into the next topic of helping somebody else cope. I think the biggest thing out of all of this for me and how it's carried over into other parts of my life is this trauma and this baggage that I have when it comes to relationships. I am so afraid of losing another person close to me. Like I said in the last video, I'm still very overprotective of my mom. I have her location on so I can check, but if she's not replying to me longer than normal, or I'm calling her and she's not picking up her phone, I go into panic mode. I am freaking out, you know, I can't do anything. I'm like paralyzed. I'm like, I need to know that she's okay right now. It's like how your parents treat you when you're young and you're not picking up your phone when you're out with your friends, right? It's this feeling of doom where you're like, you think the worst and you're like, oh my gosh, like she got in a car accident, she's dead, she slipped and fell, you know, and I've lost her, and it happens so fast, it spirals. And then as soon as they call you, you know, you're like, well, now I feel silly. The same thing happens in my relationship. Dating somebody who has lost a parent is going to be a challenge, more so of a challenge than dating somebody who hasn't. But that being said, everybody's going to lose their parents at some point. So if you're thinking long term, you have to realize that this is going to be like one of the hardest things that anyone can go through at any point in their life, and it's going to affect them. My boyfriend now, we kind of have this thing, and I'm about to be pretty vulnerable here. I don't like talking about this stuff per se because it makes me feel a little psycho, but I want to be vulnerable about this so that you can see the true extent of how it really does affect me and my relationships. Yeah, this is hard to talk about. I need him to contact me no more than like 2 or 3 hours apart at a time. So if he's at work and I don't hear from him for longer than 2 to 3 hours, I freak out. I get very upset, and I'm not saying he has to like have a whole conversation with me or anything like that. What he'll do at this point, like we've gotten into a system where we kind of know how to go about this and we've worked on it together. He has been extremely open and willing, but if you know, it gets to like the 2-hour mark, he'll just send me a little text and say, hey, I'm extremely busy right now. I'll text you when I get a chance. And that is enough to ease like everything that's going on for me. But if he doesn't respond, I will blow up. I will become extremely frantic, extremely anxious and scared until he texts me back. You end up just like having a lot of fear and insecurity. It's a two-way street, and more or less you both have to be willing to work with each other. But especially if you're dating somebody who has lost a parent, because that is one of the hardest things a person can go through, you have to be so patient. So that leads me into my next little segment thing, is that question of my girlfriend or boyfriend lost a parent, what do I do to help? The first thing that I'm going to say is it is very dependent on the relationship and on the person. But I will tell you like some of the things, I guess, from my experience. So what you don't want to do, this was one of the problems I had, was my ex at the time was very pushy and particular about how I grieved. So there were nights where I was very upset, but all I wanted to do was sit in my bed and cry and just not say anything and just get it out. And he would try to say like, what's on your mind, you know? And I'd be like, I just don't want to talk right now. I just want to cry. And he'd be like, well, you can tell me. And I was like, I know I can tell you, I just don't want to. And then he would get pretty upset that I wasn't talking to him about it. And like, I think he would say that like I didn't trust him, or he would say that like I was hiding things from him. And none of that was true. I just wanted to deal with it internally in that moment, and him being there and just sitting there and being quiet and holding my hand or rubbing my shoulders. That was what I wanted, and that was enough. You know, I wanted someone to be there, but quietly. And so when he would get upset that I wasn't like getting it out the way he wanted me to, I guess, that would make me close off and retreat, and it would start to frustrate me. Obviously, patience is going to be the biggest thing, but I would also say, like, going off of that, if your partner is upset, like, ask them what they need from you. Say like, you know, do you need me to just sit here and be with you? Do you want me to give you advice? Do you want me to make you laugh? Communicate and do your best to be patient and understanding of what they want, even if you don't feel like it's the right thing. If you feel like they should be grieving differently, it's different for everybody, and you can't tell somebody how to grieve. Being understanding too that the grief can manifest itself into strange ways sometimes. If I'm afraid, sometimes, like I said, I'll react in an angry way. And of course, for my partner, they're like defensive, like, why are you so mad? It's hard and for me in that moment to explain. Deep down, it's fear, and it's feeling like that fear wasn't considered by the action they took. And so I think communicating properly is one of the most important things you can do to get through this. Like, if somebody's acting irrational or different than they normally do, you know, like, give them some space, like, let them take what they need to take in order to get through that headspace moment. But then, like, sit down and talk to them and be like, hey, what's going on? And this goes for the person who lost their parent too. It's sometimes very hard to be open and vulnerable with that person in that moment, but doing your best to communicate and be open about your feelings and letting them know exactly what's going on, you know, if you can. It's something that you guys are going to have to go through together and learn to navigate together. And you have to realize, usually, like, married couples go through this. They're very stable, but when you're just dating somebody, especially on the person's end who lost the parent, you start to put a lot of things into perspective and really think about, like, is this person handling this the way that I need them to? And if they're not, it puts in your head that if they can't handle this, how are we going to get through anything together? And so I really think that this part in the relationship, as the person dating the person who lost the parent, you have to kind of be on your best behavior. Normally, couples are giving each other like 50-50. And in this situation, and this can go on for months or even like a couple of years if it really takes that long. You know, I think it gets better before then, but it depends on the person. You will be putting in maybe, you know, 80-20. You might be putting in a lot more than you're receiving, but you need to do your best to understand as well that they have nothing to give. Like, going back to my relationship, that relationship didn't work out, the one that I was in when I lost my dad. Especially in the beginning, you know, like, he was, you know, sometimes upset that I wasn't as romantic. I wasn't as, like, kissy huggy as I was prior, and he would get upset about this, you know, because he wasn't getting what he needed. And I understand how hard that is, but the person who lost the parent at that point has nothing to give, like nothing. Your entire mind really is focused on this loss. You're trying to get through your day, like day by day, hour by hour, and you're trying to get through it, and you want to give that person love and you want to be affectionate with them, but you're drained. You're physically drained. You're emotionally drained. You're so numb because of everything going on that you almost like don't feel the same feelings. And that can all get very jumbled and very messy very quickly. And that's again why communication is so important. I didn't communicate very well with my ex because I didn't want to hurt him any more than I felt like I was already hurting him, and I felt guilty for it. But the reality was I had nothing to give at that point. I really was using everything I had to make it through my days and to try to like move on and start my life again, because you're rebuilding, right? Like you're rebuilding from this lost point. You have to kind of essentially start over and figure out who you are, what you're gonna do, like what does your future look like now? I'm trying to think of what else here. I feel like I'm missing stuff. What am I missing? Okay, well, I think that I'm gonna wrap it up here. I really have been wanting to make this video for so long. I was kind of just feeling like I needed to get in the right headspace to do it, and I didn't know how I wanted to go about it. And to be honest, neither one of those things ever really got resolved. It was just today, it felt like the day, like it just felt like a good day to do it. But I hope that this was able to maybe answer some of your questions about where I'm at now, how it affects me today, and also how you can be supportive and handle being in a relationship with someone who has lost a parent. That being said, if I did miss anything or there's questions that you still have, please ask them in the comments below. I will do my best to answer every single question. If you have other advice or tips for how to maintain a relationship or be supportive of your boyfriend or girlfriend, or where you're at, or things I missed, or literally anything, comment them below. I'd love to read them. Also, if there are videos that you guys want to see on this topic, I more or less am a pretty open person, especially if I feel like I'm helping other people in the process, and a lot of people know my story. So if there are things that you guys want me to make other videos on in regards to what happened, please let me know. In terms of like coming back to YouTube and making YouTube videos again, it's something that I really want to do and have wanted to do. I'm just still like, I just moved, you know, my mom's moving away, like there's a bunch of things going on in my life where I just really haven't felt ready to like sit down and like actually try to make videos again. But I'm hoping that here soon-ish I will start posting, you know, again, somewhat regularly. I just don't know yet exactly what it's gonna be, what it's gonna look like. If I do post, it might be very scarce, like, you know, once a month, once or twice a month. But honestly, we're just gonna see how it goes. Really, I just want to say that anybody who's going through this right now, maybe I'm biased, but this is the hardest thing that you've probably ever had to go through, and it's devastating, it's traumatizing, it's horrible. But one of the biggest things for me is looking for light in little things and being grateful for what I have and the people that I do have and the memories that I got to make with that person. And I just want to let you all know that when I read your comments, I really do feel for you. And some of you have lost your parent when you're older. You might be in your 40s or 50s, and some of you have commented saying that you're 12 and you lost your parent. It's gonna look different for everybody, but that pain is still the same. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. And I am here for you guys, and I send my love, my thoughts, and you can do this. You can. Trust me. If I can, you can. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye.